I was trying to figure out a way that I could do this bit of content. And originally, I was going to do a scripted bit of content, which was either going to be an Infinium free talk or a short take. But I kept coming back to the way this content is being produced because I found that the free talk, the scripted free talk, or the short take things that I do, or any type of scripted kind of content which I do, would not be appropriate for what I am going to try to put across in this content. Now, I need to kind of lay out my design as a man, I should say, and what I currently understand myself as to be at this current point in time in my life. And as many of you brothers know, I am, first of all, a Christian. I profess Christ. And then second of all, I am a MGTOW man. And I would say of myself that because of my life experiences, various jobs that I've had, all types of things that I've done, like being a photographer, like doing journalistic work, doing research, and just working in various fields. I worked in the IT industry, all these types of things. Those talents and abilities have resulted in me being, first of all, a competent observer and one who can see into situations and kind of analyze what's going on and see the truth of what's happening. I also discovered that, well, I'll back up. One of the things that brought me to the MGTOW philosophy was the phenomena that I noticed wherein I would always encounter situations where women, etc., could not read me or scan me. And if you look at the body of my work, you will see that because of those experiences, I began to discover that women are intensely reading and scanning me, scanning men, that type of thing, that they're doing these things. But what I did not understand, and what I'm just now beginning to understand, is that those abilities came because I have empathic capabilities. And I'm just now finding that out about myself. I'm just now beginning to understand what empaths are, that type of thing. And from my research into the issue, I would say because of the things that I've experienced as an empath, I am, quote unquote, supposed to be a super empath. But I don't say these things as to be pounding on my chest that I'm better than everybody else. I'm just an average dude. And what I'm trying to say is that I find myself, because of these things, in extraordinary situations. And those extraordinary situations, I feel that God often uses them to give me understanding about my life path and what I'm doing and what I should be doing. And again, it's not about me being better than everybody else. It's I believe it's more about how we learn through life, how we experience life, and how we, particularly when we're trying to do something that's helpful to another human being, it's about that. And so again, it's not about me boasting upon myself, not about me trying to do anything about grifting or anything like that. It is more about my heart's desire and the things that I am doing now as a MGTOW in terms of trying to help men. And it is also about how sometimes I encounter situations where I feel God uses those situations to etch into my mind and cause understanding into something that I am not familiar with. And one of those things that I'm not familiar with is being a father, and being a father who has a young boy. I expect that as my life progresses, I will not have any children. I will not know what it is to be a father. And I'm good with that because I know that there is every possibility of something going wrong which could negatively affect my life, and that it is not something I should seek after as a MGTOW man, that I should not seek after trying to procreate, trying to have children, trying to have a legacy. And I would go around sometimes saying, thank God I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to deal with a baby mama. I don't have to deal with being divorced and having to fight with the wife over my kids, or having to worry about how my wife is treating my kids and if she is being diligent in the taking care of my kids, my boy, when I was out busting my case and trying to do what I need to do. Would she be doing the right things? But again, sometimes the way things work with me, and I would say God and all that, is that I would be placed into a situation where I get that understanding, and that understanding is etched into my mind for the rest of my life. Now, what I was doing a few weeks back, I was doing an Infinium out and about, and I was in a park, and I was positioned way in the back of the park where I could basically see what was going on, see who was coming towards me, that type of thing. And I had basically finished my content, finished recording it, and I was going through what I have recorded to see if there was anything else I needed to do with the content, any mistakes that I made, anything that needed to be re-recorded. And as I was doing that, I noticed a pregnant white woman, and she was well into her pregnancy along with her little boy. And they were a bit off of me. They were a bit of a distance off of me. I'd say about half of a length of a football field. And I continued to do my work. I continued to look at my content. But I kept noticing that the woman was on her smartphone, and she was babbling in terms of an intense conversation. I couldn't hear it because of the distance, but I could tell she was babbling and she was intently into the conversation, whoever she was talking to. And the young boy began to walk away from her. Now, again, she was about half of the length of a football field away from me. And the boy began to walk away from her, and she did not notice. She just kept on talking on her phone. He walked kind of parallel to where I was, and then when he spotted me, he began to angle over to where I was. I was sitting at a picnic table and had my stuff set up where I could record and everything. And so the young boy slowly begins to angle towards me, and then finally makes his way over to me, gets behind me, and within about 5 inches of me, just stands there and looks at what I'm doing. I looked across to the mother, and she had completely turned her back to where her child was. And I became angry. I became upset. And I tried to get the little boy's attention to go back to his mother. And he didn't pay me any attention. He just looked at what I was doing and then walked off parallel to where she was, and then angled back to where she was and got back into her presence. She had turned around and saw that he was there and continued with her conversation. Now, normally I would just kind of settled down. I was a little bit angry at what had happened. I was angry because the mother had turned her back on her kid, and the kid was all the way by me, and she had turned her back on him. And in her condition, she was well into her pregnancy. She would not be able to run over to where I was to get this boy. But I settled down and I just began to go back to what I was doing. But then again, my attention was caught by this boy doing this again. And he did walk parallel to me and then angled over to me and then wound up again by my side within 5 inches of me. This time the mother had turned around and she was kind of looking for the boy, and I tried to motion to her to ask where the boy was. She did not move from her position. She just stood there, and the boy again did what he did before, just walked back over parallel to where she was and then angled back to her and got back in her presence. I was again angered by what had happened, and I tried again to calm myself down and get back to what I was doing. And this happened again a third time. The mother was babbling on her phone. The boy paralleled himself to me and then angled over to me and got within 5 inches of my back. This time the mother did look over to me and I motioned to her to come get her kid, which she did do. And she waddled over to me and got within a short distance to me and got the boy. And I was so livid and so angry. All I could say to her was that in a few minutes, your boy was over here in close proximity to me. He could have been gone just like that. And I snapped my fingers. And she began to babble and say that, oh, I'm sorry that he bothered you. He just likes to run around. And at that point, I cut her off and I said, okay, in a sarcastic manner, because it was, in my opinion, BS. And I sensed in her an immediate pricking of her spirit because of the way I cut her off and what she was doing, her BS explanation of what she had done to this boy. And she just got quiet, got a look on her face of embarrassment, grabbed the boy's hand, and walked immediately out of the park. At that point, I was livid. I was deeply angry. And I sat there for a few moments, tried to calm myself down and get back to what I was doing. And I tried to resume what I was doing, but I found myself in a condition where I just could not concentrate on what I was doing because I was thinking about this boy and what could have happened to him, what the consequences of her actions. All these things came into my mind. And I just could not continue with what I was doing. So I packed up my stuff and walked back to my ride. When I was sitting in my ride, I couldn't really get myself to drive off because I had totally lost it. But as I tried to calm down, I could not calm down. And what happened to me was a type of extrapolation of what it would feel like as if I was the father of that young boy. And for a brief moment in time, I would say about 10 minutes, I felt such grief, such horror, such sadness that I could never, ever explain, and I have never, ever felt in my life, only to say that if I was a father, that would be the type of grief, sadness, and anger that I would feel, that if what had happened, if what could have happened to that boy happened to him, if somebody had grabbed him and he was gone forever, if he had become molested, all those things, I felt that as if that boy was my son and was of my seed. That's how intense the feeling was. That's how intense the type of thing that I felt. And I sat there with this grief, this horrible grief which brought me to tears, to the point of tears. And I could not, for a few minutes, I could not overcome this thing because it was that intense. I could not drive off because it was that intense. And then gradually I began to get back under control. And I thought about the warning, the snap of the finger that I gave to that woman because of her irresponsibility. And the instant I thought about that, a God notion popped into my mind. And it was, the warning was not for her, it was for him. And I began to realize that the warning had pricked her seared consciousness to the degree that it showed her that what she had done to this boy was unforgivable to some degree. And that if he had been taken, she would be held accountable for her actions. That she had actually turned her back on her boy. That she had did these things. And this boy's life would have been destroyed had these things happened to him. And she needed to know this and to understand this, that no phone call, no talking on a smartphone is more important than your young boy. And I was also pricked because I needed to understand, as one who is not a father, who is not one who has a son, I needed to understand and to feel that grief, that horror, that unfathomable, powerful depth of sorrow that men experience when they have, in particular, their sons stripped away from them in any type of fashion like this. I need to understand the importance of who we are as men, and that from the point of our birth, we are not wanted by this society. I need to understand that, how extensively this unneeded feeling that is thrust upon us, that a woman would go so far because of her seared consciousness to let her boy wander off in a manner like that and totally turn her back onto him and allow that to happen. I need to understand what a father would feel. I need to understand that. I need to see how truly destructive womanism and the effect of womanism is upon the lives of we men. Because it affects us not only as adults, but it affects us when we are young men, young boys. It causes women like Cynthia G to come out with statements that all black male babies should be aborted because they are worthless. It causes the angst and the hatred of we men when we are told that we are worthless, that we don't deserve anything. And what we are deserving of is to be slaves. But other than that, we deserve not to live. That's what this pricking did to me. That's what this experience did to me. It solidified who I am as a MGTOW. It showed me an experience that I thought I would never have or never have to deal with. But it opened my eyes to, again, the grief and the sorrow that men go through, and particularly with their sons in relationship to womanism. So many things happened on that day. There's some things that I can't really at this time explain, but I do know in particular that my decision years ago to become a MGTOW was indeed the correct decision. And at this point, I see no other way but to live my life as a MGTOW and as a free man.